Alright, so originally I was going to do everything at my house during my break, but I forgot to bring my capture card, so I'm going to record myself speaking for now, and I'll record gameplay at a later time, so hopefully things won't be too off. Regardless, I should still cover everything I think is important to discuss on improving your team abilities in a war, and hopefully this will lead to some better results if changes are made. Some of the things I'll say may sound obvious, some may not. If I say something obvious, it's probably because I've noticed many players, even really good players, ignore it before, and it's something I want to put emphasis on. So, into the actual tips, the first thing I'll start with is one of the most important things that people always find a way to forget about, and that's collecting coins during a race. So coins are actually really crucial, and many players just ignore them. And I'd say that they're the key to maintaining a first place front runner or catching up to begin with. So driving with 0 coins as compared to 10 with the same combo, same character, I would say that's a speed difference almost comparable to playing 100cc versus 150cc. And in this game, coins are even more important than the Wii U version since the game is less about driving techniques and more, I would say more about using items well and taking good lines. So coins are important, but it's also important to know when taking them is important. So obviously, it's not too long a video. I can't go over every single set of coins in the game, but I think it's important to talk about decision making and when you should get them because it's dependent on when in a race you get them and where you are relative to the pack. So when you're fighting for first place, a lot of time it's better to take the tightest line because in a race your placement is more important than the time you finish. So even though on Yoshi Valley, for example, it's faster in time trial to get the 3 coins on the cave route lap 1, but when you're starting a race in first place, it's better to go for the bridge route on the far left. That's faster lap 2 and lap 3 normally, but in a war, holding first place down is more important than getting the coins lap 1 because you have to hold on to first place, obviously, if you want to get more points, and protecting it's important. On the other hand, for drivers starting in the middle of the pack, it may be smart to take a different route than the fastest route because you can get coins that way. So on the other, so pretty much it may be you may want to take the cave route if you're like starting in 4th or 5th and nobody else in front of you takes it because it's free. It's 3 free coins. Or you could take the right then left path and potentially get 4. But obviously, if one person kind of steals them, it'd be not as effective. But it's still important to think about it and try to get them early because because the coin advantage will help you later in the race. A general rule of thumb for getting coins in first is to go for coins that are a little bit out of your line, but not too far, as long as it means you'll hold on to your spot, because that's the most important thing when you're in first place. In bottom spots, going even out of your way for coins can be beneficial because because when you're in a bottom spot, like it doesn't really matter how far back you are. I mean, you're going to get good items back there to catch up. You might as well try to catch up with like 8, 9, or 10 coins because that'll help you catch up easier. Because like if you get back, so let's say you get a golden mushroom, you can just use it. You get into like 4th or 5th. If you have 1 coin, like you're just gonna get hit out, caught up to really quickly, and you'll be back at square 1 in the back. So you want to make your comebacks worthwhile, and I think the best way to do that is to have many coins, if not maximum. So in bottom spots, you can go out your way. And okay, what point in a race is also important. So let's take a scenario on GBA Mario Circuit after the anti-gravity ends. Let's assume you have triple mushrooms and less than 4 coins. On lap 1, I'd recommend going wide and taking the 4 coins, and assuming you're far from first, chaining the mushrooms into a double box. On lap 2, I may take the set of 3 coins and do the same thing. But on lap 3, I would take the shortcut before the items and ignore the coins completely because at that point the extra coins won't have much of an effect with less than 15 seconds left, and it probably wouldn't be faster than taking the shortcut at that point. So the important skill here It's just knowing when taking them is a good idea, and it is a lot, so I'd get in the habit of picking them up whenever the coins are not too far out of the way. The next thing to go over is probably item management and how to manage your items, I guess, in first place, importantly. So, pretty much in first place, you probably noticed that you're going to get a lot of coins, and that's normal. So, the thing you want to make sure you do is not get double coins, and that's just like the first basic step. Obviously, if you have double coins, you have nothing to defend yourself. So what you're going to do is, if you don't know this already, you want to hold coins into item sets, because if you have a coin and you get a new item, you will guaranteed 100% not get another coin. So always having protection is very important. Um, if you get so double boxes also like guarantee that you get at least one defense item, so they're usually important to get, usually worth going out your way to get. So order of your item is also important, especially in first place, because boos are in the game and they will steal items, and I'm not certain on this, but I believe that they target first place more than other spots. So obviously, when first place, you have to deal with red shells behind you. You're going to want to be prepared for the worst. So it's better to have a coin in your first slot than it is to have it in your second. Because if you have a coin in your second, if a boo comes and just steals your defense item, then you're kind of screwed. Especially if there's another red shell coming, because you'll then have nothing to defend yourself with. So in general, when you're running at first, you're going to want to have a coin in the first slot and defense in the second slot. So if a red shell comes, you can use the coin, pull out your defense, and block it. If you get double defense, that's very rare. I would never backspam double defense because it's just rare, and you want to be able to have as much protection as you want, and it's probably not going to be something you get again for the rest of the race. Um, Super horns are a little bit different because they can block blue shells. They may be worth it to hold on to them in your first slot, especially if you have a teammate behind you. Teammates in second is very powerful, and when you have a teammate in second, you can at least keep red shells from even targeting you to begin with. So obviously a front run is boosted when you have teammates behind you, but if you're alone in the front and you have somebody that you are playing against behind you, well, you're going to want to, I guess, have be as well defended as possible. So another thing to consider is bombs, and bombs pretty much are kind of rare in first place, but not too rare. Something new in this game. Bombs are they can blow up red shells, but you need to have them you have to time it kind of to block the red shells. I would say that bombs are a very good weapon in first place to trap people into getting hit by them. I think they're a good offensive weapon even in first place, especially since you can still get defense with them a decent amount of times. Bombs can also be used as an intimidation tool, as crazy as that sounds. So, like, if people can obviously see items in this game, so if they see that you're holding a bomb in first, they're likely going to respect you a little bit more because they don't want to get hit by it. So, using it when you know you'll hit them is good, especially if they can't punish you. Like, if you look back and you see if they have a red shell, you're going to need to hold the bomb to like make sure that you can defend it. But yeah, they're a good offensive weapon, and you can you can kind of use it as intimidation. Another thing that's important is you can hide it if you have it in your second slot. And if you want to be really fast, I guess you can like use your first item, which is probably a coin, and then back the bomb, and they won't even see it coming. So obviously it depends like where your teammates are at and how you plan it, but bombs are important also. Another fun scenario is what you can do on path splits with bombs. So let's say that you have top two and there's a guy in third on the other team. What's interesting is like, for example, on cloud top cruise, if you're like driving, you got the top two, you can like communicate and tell the guy in second so like right before the cannon, if the guy in second goes the left path, which is the slower route, and the guy in third on the other team takes the right path, the guy in first can back the bomb without them even really kind of seeing it coming, get them in third, and then have a top two breakaway. So really, just like stuff like that can be really interesting to play around with, I guess. So that's pretty much it I have for first place item usage. So I'll get to how to use items more in the back. But remember, defense is important. Don't take it for granted. But back spamming can also be useful. But I would say you should be confident that you're going to hit somebody before you back spam, just because red shells are common and defense is important, I guess. So yeah. Driving in the middle or back of the pack is also very different than driving in a top spot. You have a lot more leniency on what you can do, I guess, because like you gotta face it, when you're in first place, like your spot's like really important. When you're in the back, it doesn't make too much of a difference. Obviously, you want to shoot for the front. Like if you're in first place, you're gonna want to maintain that, but if you're in the back, you're always gonna want more. So what you do in the back doesn't matter as much, I guess. Like you have more leniency and more strategy on what you can do, I guess. So if you're like pretty far, so this game has a position and distance based item system. So your position relative to first place can be very important. It's split into tiers on how far back you are, and you get items on you have specific chances on getting items, I guess, based on how far you are back. So one of the further back spots or intervals, I guess is what I could call them. One of the further back item intervals makes getting stars and triple mushrooms extremely common, and you can kind of abuse that so if you get like double items, you aren't going to get 2 stars or 2 triple mushrooms. So a lot of times if you get a double box, you'll almost guaranteed get stars and triple mushrooms in this interval. And it's kind of important to recognize what interval it is, because in a game with the lightning bolt or shock so powerful, being in a star like consistently can sometimes even guarantee dodges, especially in like free for alls, or make it really hard on other teams to like find a good time to use a shock if like you're always in a star, or like know like when they're going to want to use it. So a lot of times you can chain in the back stars and triple mushrooms for more, I guess. And I'll try to find a race where like I kind of do this, but it can be powerful, especially on tracks like Donut Plains 3, Yoshi Circuit, Dry Desert, and Cheeseland, stuff where there's a lot of off-road and stuff and a lot of areas to chain. You can kind of like plan your plot back to first place as you see it, I guess, and that's what makes item play so powerful in this game, is that you get 2 sets. So I'm going to use that as a transition into talking about double boxes to begin with, because in all areas, especially the back, double boxes are extremely important. So I'd say they're important for different reasons, but like in first place, you can see a double box is guaranteed protection, and in the back, like getting a double box is very worth it, I would say, because let's say like on Sunshine Airport on the anti-gravity, you're going to want to get the double box in the back almost every time, even if it means braking or pressing B during your drift for it, because yeah, like you can brake and like maybe lose a second, but getting the double box will be worth it if you get like a golden mushroom extra on top of what you would have gotten already. So one thing that is really cool about holding 2 items at once is that it kind of makes items actually more controllable, because it's obviously a roulette, but if you get one item, you can't really control what you have too much. But when there's 2 items in play, you can almost make an educated guess on what you're going to get every single set, if you have like a 1 in 2 chance of getting it, I suppose. So just keep that in mind. Getting double locks is very important. So if you're calling with teammates in wars also, I would say it's worth it to say I'm taking this double box, especially if you're in the front or whatever, because they're limited in space. You can also kind of grab them from the edges if you like want to try to leave them open for teammates. Obviously, this isn't like super consistent, but it works sometimes. If you want to get like two people like really close to each other, the same double box. That's kind of hard though. But keep in mind, like if somebody wants a double, like and they have like 0 items or whatever on your team, a lot of times it's better to let them have it and take another thing for yourself, like a single. So just keep in mind, because like you want the most items on your team possible, obviously, because then you guys can use your items the most effectively, the most. So keep that in mind. Another important thing is frontal presence, and that's something I want to talk about, I guess, because a lot of players like get irritated if they are in first place the whole race and they get hit by 2 red shells that they can't do anything about, for example. I just want to and like say, "Oh man, this game's bullshit. I hate it." So that's understandable, first of all. But one thing to keep in mind is well, in a when you're playing wars, it's a team game, I guess. So when you get hit out of first place, you can like say, "Oh, I couldn't have done anything about it," and that's probably true. But one thing to note is that you kind of can counterplay that stuff better in a team format, and it's simply by just having more than one spot. Because obviously, like first place is not too comfy, especially in a free for all. But in a war, first place can be comfy almost. They like having teammates behind you makes first place so much more powerful, and I can't stress that enough. So pretty much like if you have like top 3 or top 4, like this is what you're gonna kind of want to do is what you're the guy in first is obviously gonna just want to front run as fast as possible, and especially like if he gets a horn, then like he's set. But what if like somebody in second or third gets a horn also? Because like holding a horn is important at first, but it can still be very important if you're just a teammate and your teammate's in first, because you can look back, kind of find out the path of a blue shell, and use your horn on the track, even if the blue's not targeting you, to block a blue shell for a teammate, and that stuff's important. But obviously, horns are still rare. That's just something to point out. But what isn't rare are red shells in second and third. So if you have top 3, like you're gonna want to hold on to red shells because well, if it really depends. If your teammate in first is gone, like it may be worth it to go for mushrooms and stuff. But if it's a close, compact pack, you're gonna want to hold red shells in second and third and really not do anything with them and just focus on driving, because that will intimidate the other team greatly. So one thing I see that I really can't stand is watching people back spam red shells when they have high spots, because well, it makes it much easier on the other team to catch up, first of all, because like maybe you lose like a spot then you would have gotten, but like the overall team impact, like it shakes the other team when the top spots all are just holding red shells and they can't really do much about it. So keep that in mind. First place of protection and teammates holding red shells is very powerful, so make sure to try to do that whenever possible. Obviously, it won't always be possible because the other team will be in the top spots also, but if you get into that scenario, like you have a significant advantage, so just try to hold on to red shells and use them accordingly when people eventually get tired of you and try to pass you anyway. One thing that's also really important with red shells, and I think green shells too, is in this game they're really weird. They have a hitbox behind, like when you throw a red shell, they have a hitbox behind you before it goes forward. So if you have a teammate right behind you and you throw a red shell, chances are you're going to hit them. It's very stupid, honestly, but it's just a fact of life. So when you're using red shells, make sure like you're like I would even say in call with to each other, I'm about to use a red shell, like space out a little and like kind of get out of his way or whatever. Not too far, but like probably at least a cart length, because if you're right behind a teammate and they throw a shell, you're probably going to get hit by it, and obviously you don't want that. That creates team rape. Your teammate loses 3 coins, people get mad at each other. It's not good for a call. So make sure you aren't like hitting your teammates with shells, obviously. Um, Using booze effectively is another thing. So this is kind of like the part of the video. Sorry, this is getting long already, but there's just so much important stuff I think to talk about. Using a boo effectively is a very important part of playing in teams, because obviously, like, if you use a boo and it targets first place, like while red shell's coming and like they lose their only defense, and like that's horrible. You can lose like 20 points because of that. Uh, what you're gonna want to do is, if you're like in a team game and you have a boo and you want to use it, you're gonna want to say, like, probably like a second or two before you use it, I'm about to use a boo, and give your teammates time to say, like, time to like, so if they don't say anything, then go ahead. But like if they say don't use it right now, just like hold on to it, because like chances are that they could be getting like really bad luck as a result, and you don't want that obviously for your team. So make sure to call out boos. It's actually really important and something that many people don't do. If you somehow have a boo in first place, by the way, if you use a boo, every single time you'll get a shroom. You may have noticed it when using a boo at the end of a race. You'll get a mushroom every single time if you use a boo in first. So keep that in mind also, because you can not only dodge shocks a boo, but like if there's a blue coming, you can have a shroom to dodge it with, or take a shortcut off also. So yeah, another thing that's general to do, I guess, when calling is just like calling out your spot every once in a while. Just like say, I'm fourth or I'm seventh right now. Sixth has triple red, stuff like that. That's like the kind of important stuff that's useful for teammates to know. Like, you don't want to just like complain about stuff, obviously, but like update people on the situation, because to it's really hard to know everything that's going on in a room. So like just saying stuff that is useful, that is not obvious to your teammates, would be something good to do also. What else? What else? Using no, not that. Team combos. That's what I was wanting to do. If you Something that's actually really important to do is just memorizing your team combos also throughout the match. So like when you have a red shell or whatever, you don't have to hesitate wondering if it's your teammate. I think the video I'm mainly making this for is a team that uses all orange Miis, so I would use so that makes it easy. Is another thing, is just knowing when you can chuck items at people quicker, I guess. So make sure to do that also, so you know everything that's going on, I guess, in your match. And that'll be it for this section. I think I'll have one or two more, but we'll see. But anyway, sorry that this is getting long.
Alright, so got a few more things to talk about, I guess. Mostly about shocks and shock bagging, I guess, but a few other comments before I get to that. Bullet bills are really good for catch-up. So like then there's a few spots that they're like better than others, I guess. So like stuff like taking it at the first shortcut on DYC is really good, especially if you're really far back. Taking on the keys in Music Park are really good also. So keep in mind, maybe find some spots that you like to use on your own, preferably ones that can that end like right before an item set also, or ones that just last generally long. So keep stuff out for that. Another thing that's kind of important in this game would be team picking tracks before a race, I guess, because some are definitely better than others. Depending on like who's starting in first, like you can like kind of get specialties for like starting first and stuff. And some tracks just obviously work better for like the back. Some work better, like TM or whatever is like pretty good for like middle spots, because you can get a mushroom per set and use that like immediately and just gain a ton of time and just become first right off the bat. So keep that in mind also. One thing I'm not certain if I've talked about yet is looking back. That's also really important, especially in the front, because you can obviously see the items that your opponents are carrying, at least in the first slot. And if you can see what they have, a lot of times you'll like gain vital information. Like you may not even notice that somebody's holding a blue behind you on the other team, but you can like call it out if you like look it back and see it. So like you can be more prepared. Maybe somebody in second on your team has a horn or whatever and needs to know not to use it this set, so he can hold it and try to like get the blue or something. And first, you can also like if you're like see somebody like directly in your line or whatever, you can like throw back a quick green shell. They go super fast in this game. Try to back spam that way also. In general, I do it whenever you can, really, without like getting out of your line and stuff, because looking back is very useful. So anyway, last thing to talk about is shocks. This is going to be the last subject, but probably the longest one because it's such a big item, I guess, when it comes to like meta stuff. So obviously it's important. If you remember me talking about item intervals a little bit ago, the shock is obtainable in the one past where you normally get triple mushrooms and stars. So it's pretty far behind first. The biggest change in this game in the Wii U version is that you can get it semi-reliably, but you can also get it unintentionally, so I'm going to briefly discuss how to use it first and then how to frequently get it as well. So obviously the first thing you think about with the shock is dodging in either star, bill, or boo. Most of your dodges are likely going to be via stars, since you can get stars in the back using a double box pretty much consistently. Shocks are a really powerful tool for this purpose, but a good shock will also prevent the other team from dodging themselves and also leave them in a really tough spot. So often a good time to use a shock will be to chain your players into a set of items and to get your opponents after like they go through a set of items, or when they're over a gap, like on Cloud Top Cruise, for example. Like if you use a shock while they're in the cannon, that's like a massive time loss for anybody who gets caught in that, so keep that in mind. A good example of other devastating places to get shocked is like right after the second set of boxes on Cheeseland, because it prevents people from doing the double cut at the end of the lap, and it can hit people over like the glider gap also. Another place would be after the second set of items on Hyrule, because the staircase is pretty hard to like accelerate and get a drift on, and the only place to get a new item box for like the rest of the lap, and if it's lap 3, the whole race, is it's significantly slower than taking the no item shortcut to the right also. So you can force people to choose a time loss or potentially having like no defense. So when using a shock, I would recommend going like 3, 2, 1 activate shock, called by one of the people dodging instead of the person using it, because they have a better idea what the pack is like. So this way the people with dodges can use their items before the shock occurs. I would recommend using stars and bullet bills like right after the person doing the countdown says 2, and boos right before saying 1, because with boos, like, you don't want to use those first because you could steal dodge items from your teammates before they can use their stuff. So keep in mind that call lag exists also, especially on Discord. So like make sure like if you like say like if you use your stuff before like somebody says 1 on the countdown, like you'll obviously dodge. Like the worst things, like when you have a dodge and like your teammate uses the shock because they are early or whatever, and you don't get to join in on it, and that just kind of sucks. So just make sure it doesn't happen. For Division 7, it may be sufficient to use dodges after the 3 is heard and boos after 2, but this is like obviously due to your own comfort and stuff. You just like at the top level, like you're gonna want to be able to do this on a dime, like really fast. But obviously, like when you're like first getting started, just like find something that works for your team. So gonna end this section on this and then do the final discussion. So be right back. Okay, on the last part now. Getting shocks are really interesting in this game because it's by no means guaranteed, so it's risky, but it can also pay off and be done very intentionally. So I'm going to explain how you should attempt it generally, and whether or not you want to try is up to you really, but the goal is to at least give you knowledge on how it works. Note that it's not a strategy that's a free win, and there is counterplay to it that you should be aware of, especially like if you don't like it to begin with. So the best time to drop back can't really be solved with a formula, but like everything, it's situational. So on a track with like a lot of off-road, like GBA, Mario Circuit, bagging for shocks on lap 1 is actually not really risky at all, because catching up from nearly 2/3 of lap behind is not too tough on a track like this, because there's tons of places where you can go off-road where the people in first can't. So when in the back, it's rare that items hit you as well, and you can almost always have 10 coins because you're not getting hit. So unlike the other players, you will be going faster with better items, have 10 coins, and all while getting the best items in the game. So what makes this game worth the risk compared to the last game on the Wii U is that you can use 2 items at once now. So you can come back from super far distances, because it's unlikely you'll never be without the effect of an item to catch up. And your chance to get a shock is effectively doubled in this game also, so it's more worth it to try. So if you decide to bag, I would suggest stopping at the first set of item boxes, and you can get a star and maybe triple shrooms, or single shroom, you may pull that. On a track like GBAMC, you'll have to go backward at the start to the item by the boost panel on the right path to get your first 2 items, because you can't stop at the first set in the game because they're in midair. So in this scenario, don't use items because you won't get a shock in the first 30 seconds of a race, so it's not worth it to try. So just hold the stuff you get at the very beginning and focus on collecting 10 coins, because you don't want to get like a bullet bill or a golden mushroom on accident, because those are the worst items to have if you're wanting to get the shock for pretty obvious reasons. So by the time you get to the first set with double items, you should probably be like half a lap behind, have 10 coins, and preferably nothing in your inventory, but make sure to hold your star and mushroom, like, so you don't, until like you're trying to get the shock, so you don't accidentally get stuff that you don't want. So you'll want to use all the items before the double to get a fresh set of 2 items. This is the first set, the first doubles, you have like the best shot to get it the whole race, because you're furthest back at that time. You may want to run into a double, drive backward a little, and if you get triple shrooms or a star in the first or both slots, spam all of them into the box and try to roll another 2 items. From here, you'll want to start catching up, but it's possible that you get the shock while catching up also, which is a benefit. So if played correctly, you'll probably catch up by the end of the race and even have a high shot at getting a top spot, even if you don't get the shock. But if you do, then you can plan with your team how to use it for your benefit. Okay, if it's lap 3 and something crazily stupid happened, it may be worth it to give up your race. Like in a different scenario, like if you get like just destroyed and you're not going to catch up, it may be worth it to like try to get it last second by like just sacrificing yourself pretty much. I did this once in a tournament match, and I was like super far behind on SA, and the other team had top 5, so I just stopped and tried to get it, and I managed to get a favorable roll, and it was worth it. So it's always a significant game changer, so keep it in mind. I wouldn't recommend sacrificing your own race unless it's like the last possible option, but it's something to keep in the knowledge banks, I guess. So a thing about the shock, it's really good. It's by far the best item in team play, even over triple reds, but it's not a free win. Matter of fact, one of my favorite things about this game is that you can counterplay it if you suspect the other team has it and like kind of disrupt it. So making sure you have the right amount of front runners, pack disruptors, people playing with power items in the back, that's important. So like I mentioned earlier, getting stars and triple shrooms can almost be pushed to a guarantee to certain item boxes behind first. So like, or certain item intervals, I mean, like, so you can almost always get like a star. So if you use it a lot, teams get nervous about dodging people on the other team, even if it would still be beneficial to them to use a shock at that time. So with really good communication, you can almost have someone in your team in a dodge at all times lap 3, and that can make it really difficult on the other team if they're trying to use like dodges and stuff. So sometimes, or well, something you may not know is that you can only obtain the shock in 9th or lower in 12-person rooms. And I think it's probably 8th to 10th in 5v5s, but I'm not certain. I feel like it's more common in 12th and 9th, but that may just be me. It could be just distance intervals messing with me, since it's higher odds, obviously, if you're further back. I can't confirm this, but I do know that 9th is the highest you can pull it in 6v6, so keep that in mind. Another thing to note is that when the shock is in play already, like somebody's holding it, it actually increases the odds of another one appearing. This isn't confirmed through studies or anything, but based on my experiences, I am practically certain this is the case. So if you see the other team holding shock, oftentimes you can go for it in 9th and 12th and use it earlier than them to foil their plans. Generally, you'll want to use shocks somewhat quickly as a result to beat out the other team, but keep in mind the most powerful shocks come lap 3, because it can be the final major effect on the race. Knowing only you have shock on lap of 3 is very powerful, even though it's sometimes tough to set up to actually have it on lap 3 without somebody disrupting you already. So keep in mind that you just can't hold it forever without consequences, unlike MKW. So, well, unless you get started on MKW, but like even that's kind of rare. So essentially, there's a lot of flexibility with the item. So I'd just study up the strategies on it and also study the counterplay, because it is pretty important whether you actively shock bag, just bag a little, or don't even think about it much. Just knowing how it works is pretty crucial. So. Alright, so I think I've covered most like basics for the shock, but like last thing I guess I could talk about is habits of like other teams, because they change when they have it. So if you see a guy like holding a star on the other team and he doesn't like do the normal chain into the next set, it's probably possible that his team could be holding the shock and wants to get more. So remember, he could. I mean, it's not entirely certain that like it could be better for him beneficial, or it could be better for him to just hold it. But if it's something that's happening frequently, it's probably possible that he's planning to dodge. So you may want to watch these players and try to get dodge items and dodge with them. Additionally, if you're watching the guy who's like in the back, if he suddenly stops like taking shortcuts or like having animations and a star or a bill, those are probably big signs that he's holding a shock or maybe a blue. And if your team's in first, like it means they aren't holding the blue also. So if there's a guy in the back who clearly has not disconnected and your team is in first and he's not really using anything, like that's a pretty big tell, I guess. Another strategy is hiding shocks from the other team, because you can keep it in the second slot, so like it won't appear on the map. So if you see them like holding their first item and you're like by them, they may be trying to hide it from you. That's another potential thing that teams will and can do to try to confuse you, because the sense of urgency isn't really there until like you have confirmed it. But just remember, it could appear at any time. And what else? Perhaps another strategy versus some of the better teams is that if your race is over and you have top spots and you're guaranteed to get 12, you can kind of fake having it at times by like not using any items in 12, or just like trying to act like you're afraid to let them see what you have and like slowing down. They may try to hold their dodges as a result to predict it, and they may waste their time in doing so. I wouldn't recommend that strategy in lower divisions though, since opponents may not even be aware of what you're trying to bait them into thinking. But it's something to keep in mind versus top teams. Thinking about other players in the room at large is pretty much the key to winning at the higher level. So if I had to summarize everything, the way to get better is to simply think more. I mean, it sounds obvious, but like thinking about like actions like more than one step in advance, that's how you're going to get better at any game, at least in the mental part of it. So thinking about like other players also, and not just yourself, like the room at large, that's a key to winning also. But you gotta understand the basics about yourselves first. So really, would I say, if you're going to take away one thing from watching, I would say just challenge yourself to think about the game more. Think about like what could happen, like what's going to happen if you throw this item here. Is it safe? If it's not, is it not safe? Is there a risk that is worth taking even if it's not safe, because like the outcome may be greater? So yeah, that is pretty much the summary. Sorry if this turned out to be pretty long. I was not expecting near 40-minute video, but there's just so many basic stuff that I thought was necessary to talk about. So if you stuck it out, watched it all, you are the trooper. I appreciate the viewership, and good luck in your matches, and hope that this helps. Thanks.